Hello again. Now here is something a little bit different for you. There's a new trend for homeowners to let their gardens grow wild. That's to attract butterflies and bees, but it's causing rows between neighbours. Well, leaving your lawn to become a wild meadow has become a low-effort trend amongst the eco-conscious who are seeking a more environmental approach to managing their gardens. Well, the movement has got a name. It's been dubbed as Rewilding Light. But estate agents warn that overgrown gardens bring down the look of the area and damage property prices. Well, to discuss this, I am now joined by James Law as a regional director at Stacks Property Search. Good morning to you, James. Is this really a thing?
It is happening, and it is happening all over the place. We are quite positive on it. It's a lovely thing, but it is something that the smaller scale rewilding really needs to be looked at quite carefully, and communication with your neighbours is probably at the end of it, really, as long as you can talk to them.
What do you mean smaller scale as opposed to what is happening?
The whole trend of rewilding sort of starts over hundreds of acres. It sort of happened in Scotland, it's happened all over the country. It's to pre-introduce wild animals, etc., etc. Smaller pre-scaling, rewilding, as in rewilding light, as we like to call it, is when you set aside a portion of your orchard or your back garden. You put wild meadows, wild flowers, but you just got to be careful it doesn't become overgrown and start having a negative impact on your neighbouring land.
Is it always rooted, do you think, in some kind of sort of ecological thinking, or is it just a trend, or is there any element of just sheer laziness about it?
I think there's an element of all of those. Obviously, over the years, the trend of environmental friendliness is becoming stronger. We have lots of clients who just after spending their working lives travelling just want to have a little bit of land and want to return things to nature, to maybe solve their conscience to a certain degree, but also to help the environment.
And as somebody in the property industry, how does this impact on house prices?
There is some negativity on it, although we haven't really seen that. It just needs to be thought through. It depends on the topography of your garden. Obviously, there is an excuse of laziness. If your whole area turns into a bramble hedge, it's going to look quite unsightly. So as long as you just think about it, as I said earlier, you talk to your neighbours, you explain to them the reasons behind it and what you're trying to achieve, then I think a wildflower meadow looks lovely and it can actually add value.
What about if you just say to your neighbour, you know what, I just don't really enjoy mowing my lawn, I'm just going to leave it as it is?
Well, that's always happened, hasn't it? And you do have to be careful about that. It's all a question of balancing friendship with your neighbour. Really, you don't really want to fall out with them over anything.
Is it the neighbour's business? I mean, what right does a neighbour have over how you may or may not treat your own property?
Legally, they haven't, unless you've got invasive species, Japanese, knotweed, things like that. You do have to control. Obviously, if your garden's infested with moles and rabbits and starts to attack the neighbour's flowers and things, you might have a problem on your hands.
And what about, this is totally different, but there's also a trend, isn't there, for people installing artificial grass? Now, that's not good, most people say, for the environment, but how does that impact on what people think when they're looking at a property? It's all horses for courses. It depends where you are. If you're on a top floor apartment penthouse, then maybe artificial grass is the way forward. But out in the country, good old-fashioned turf's probably the way forward. And you see this as a trend that is here for some time, do you?
I think so, as in everything comes in and out of fashion, and you could actually say pre-wilding to a certain degree is the old nature of things when everyone had English country gardens that had areas of wildflowers, areas of apple trees, and all this. It's basically not having acres and acres of manicured lawn which you cut before flowers are pollinated. It's small, simple steps that can look aesthetically pleasing, and also help nature, which obviously is a plus for everybody.
Okay, all right. So it's out with well-groomed shrubbery and in with wild meadows. Very good to talk to you. Thank you,
Thank
James
you so
Law.
much. Thank you.